Okay, I started recording.
Today, so PRDCB members are joined from iPro side.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Today, so iPro's R&D members are joined. And Hansan, double Hansan. Both of them are Hansan.
Okay. All right. So I published the agenda. Should I bring it up? Or you can all check it on GitLab?
Or you could just bring it up anyway. Maybe it's easier.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can
Yes.
see.
Okay, so the idea for today was to continue the discussion from last month about first the components and then around orchestration, and also, if we have time, maybe discuss a little bit about development environment like IDE and so on. And do you want to add something to the agenda from iPro side?
From iPro side, so I've already sent an email to Fredrickson, and so we should decide the action items and assignee and the due date about the technology management.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We can maybe, when we look at the different components, what people are interested in. Okay, so let's dig into the agenda then. So regarding the host requirements. So I don't know, there's been discussions of replacing containerd with something else, and I don't want to get into those kind of discussions, at least for the reference implementation. The containerd is like the de facto standard, and that is what we're going with. Any objections to that? I mean, also, if you use something like Cryo, it's not compatible with containerd. It doesn't provide the same API. It provides CRI only.
Hi, Frederick, I'm Ottavio.
Yes. Hi.
So I keep seeing this as a critical point. I have the impression these containerd and containers in general, we have a risk of having something that is too big to fit into an embedded device. So I see this point as extremely critical.
Yeah, but at least now the standard implementation is containerd, and for example, Cryo is not compatible with. It doesn't provide a containerd API. So, of course, if there comes up other choices, we can optimize. But at least for the reference implementation, I'm going with containerd.
Because I've been doing some research, I also sent a link while answering to the survey. I've been expecting OCI containers, so you can create extremely small ones, but really extremely small ones in terms of 300 kilobytes. So this is something that can be make a huge difference for embedding these these algorithms in devices.
Yeah, I mean, creating the containers, I mean, you could make tiny ones. You can inherit from scratch and just add one binary, and then it's a container. Container is just a packaging, right? So depends on what base layers you're using and so on.
Yeah, but then we need to do, if we do a reference implementation, we must try to address this to have a minimalized container if we want to go.
You mean the container runtime?
Yeah, everything, both the runtime is also a container that is wrapping an algorithm based on Unimatrix. So we need to put effort into minimizing both, in my opinion.
That's not my priority. My priority is not to make this fit into 32 megabyte RAM or something. It's I don't want to optimize. I mean, other people are working on making these things smaller. So when those things are ready, we should adopt them. But right now, just take off the shelf stuff and concentrate on building other things.
Yeah, I understand, but I think we're running a big risk that we will not have adoption if it's too big to fit into the devices. So that's my warning.
Yeah, I understand, of course, but it is a trend in the industry of moving container down to the edge. So it's not only, this project looking at those things. So hopefully we'll get help from other places. But yeah, I mean, I think we should use the industry standard I think it's even in our vision that we use industry standards where it makes sense and when it's available. And right now, Containerd is the standard, from my point of view. Another option is, of course, to use CRI directly and go for the whole Kubernetes stack, and but that's also huge. So I'm using Containerd and Containerd gRPC API. It's much smaller than using Kubernetes Plus.
Frederick, let me understand. You want to keep this thing because you want to use Kubernetes to orchestrate algorithms on the cameras, right?
No, if you standardize on using CRI. CRI is used for Kubernetes, right?
And Containerd?
Containerd, it has its own API. It can be used independently. You don't have to use Docker with it and so on.
Does Containerd support also OCI images?
Yes.
Okay.
But isn't it portability as well, Frederick? By choosing Containerd, we could have more portability.
I'm not sure how. If we look at Cryo, for example, or another container runtime, how compatible they are with Containerd. But honestly, I thought we would have come at least this, because that I see that as such a fundamental part. I think it's almost ridiculous to talk about it.
But maybe we should just monitor the development of container concerning the size.
Yes.
So we could have a continuous monitoring of what is happening, so we understand how the development is progressing. But I agree with Fredrik. Of course, container D is used so widely that there will be development to make it smaller.
So according to IPRO's investigation, so if we use a cryo, so the RAM size can be 20 megabytes smaller than container D. And however, so I don't know about the compatibility about between the container D and the cryo. So Hansan, could you share the knowledge about container D and cryo?
You want to see the comparisons?
Do you have a presentation or something?
If you don't have the document, so it's okay to explain.
Yes, I'll share a little bit.
So,
may I share a little?
Oh, please.
So, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So, here's that I'm trying to create a comparisons when run the container D with the run C and the cryo with the C run, and here's the memories consumptions between two cases.
But C-run, you can use that. C-run you could use with container D as well. C-run is another. That's probably easier to use C-run.
Yes, I
agree. You shouldn't mix it together because I think C-run can probably be replacing run C. I think they're almost compatible now.
Yes, I also tested with the container D, and C-run is totally can run with the container D. So the point here is that I want to see, I want to show you that the cluster with using the cryos, I think is will consume is a less resource than the container D. So for example, you can see that on the cluster that using the container D and run C, it will took around the 200 megabytes per RAM, and on the cryos and C run, it only took about 150. And I think we should consider the container D and cryos to select to choose which one is the default on our host device.
But you need to have container D and the C run as well in this table.
Actually, to run cryos, I think we want to use the cryo instead of container D. So yes, that's all I want to share about the container D and the cryos that we test on
And I think the important question is, what is our deployment API? So, I mean, if we're using Cryo, it doesn't provide deployment API, the containerd deployment API. So then the CRI is the deployment API, I guess.
Yes, so your concern is about the API?
Yes, because I don't want to have, we're not going to have Kubernetes running in our cameras because it's too big. So we want to deploy on a lower level, so using some API. Or possibly as much smaller daemon running to pull containers and so on the camera. Not something huge like Kubernetes. We don't need all those things Kubernetes provide. At least for our use cases, it's more. We don't really need, for our cases, full orchestration capabilities like load balancing and such things, and migration of workloads. And it's more from our point of view, when it comes to orchestration, it's more simple use cases that more around automation and monitoring.
Okay.
So are you saying, Fredrik, that CRI is not the deployment API we want?
Well, we should take a conscious decision. So far, when we have been talking about deployment in documents that I have made, it's always been containerd API.
But if using CRI, it doesn't really matter what runtime you use, if everybody supports CRI.
Yes, CRI is an open standard.
So is there any drawbacks of using CRI? That's, I think, something we need to understand.
Containerd also supports CRI, but with an extra plugin, if I remember correctly. So that's like the default. Normally, if you use Kubernetes today, in most cases, you will use containerd with the plugin. I think Cryo is maybe becoming more and more popular. But all of this is if we are really considering, Kubernetes to be the orchestration tool we are going for.
Okay, so we need first to figure out how we'll do the orchestration. All right.
Yeah, also, I mean, from Axis side, we are not going to have Kubernetes agents running on our cameras because it's, I think, overkill for those use cases we have. So in our case, then we would use, I guess, CRI. I don't know if that is a usable API for our cases, for just deploying containers and monitoring and so on from the outside. I haven't really looked into that.
So maybe, so first of all, so we had to decide whether the Kubernetes, for example, K3s should be introduced a Kubernetes agent should be introduced on the edge side or not. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, I mean, I don't think it should be ever mandatory, because, but we should decide which deployment API we are going for, or container management API.
But if we would use Kubernetes, would that require CRA support or not?
Yes, I think today it's like that, because I think you can still use Docker and maybe a few other runtimes as well. But the default, I would say now, is to use CRI. Maybe Brian, you have you are quite used to container runtimes, and so maybe you have some input.
Yeah, I've been looking at these ecosystems quite a bit lately for our own use. I mean, one of the challenges, right, is that not everything is compatible with kubeadm-based distributions of Kubernetes. So if you bite on something like micro-K8s or K3s or one of the related slimmed down Kubernetes distributions, you basically, you're not compatible with kubeadm central services running on the cloud. And so if cloud to edge is a key piece of the puzzle for Unimatrix, then you're kind of hosed, unless you're willing to run a kubeadm based distro at the edge as well. And there may be some fixes to that in the pipe for at least for K3s, and it is possible to conceivably fork K3s and implement support for kubeadm upstream. But it would appear to be a fair amount of work. So that's something to think about. I hate to add one more concern to the Kubernetes selection piece of the puzzle, but it seems like kubeadm on the cloud is sort of the standard. I'm not seeing a lot of people running K3s in the cloud. So an end-to-end solution, at least for the Unimatrix use case, the cloud to edge use case is elusive right now. I guess the other major concern and a reason that we've been looking at Podman quite a bit is standardization around startup scripts and things of that nature. This sounds sort of trivial, right? I guess from an embedded perspective. People aren't worrying too much about, hey, what are your scripting entry points to your containers? But from a developer's perspective, especially if we try to attract more naive developers who maybe are just getting their feet wet with this technology, then having things that work with systemd out of the box is a very nice convenience. It's a nice enough of a convenience that we're thinking about using Podman end to end, just because as much as we all like to complain about systemd, it solves a lot of problems for naive developers. Because
we are using systemd, but with containerd.
Oh, interesting. So how are you doing that?
I mean, we have systemd. I'm saying we are using systemd natively on our host. We are not using inside of the containers. Is that?
Yeah. So this is the major advantage of Podman, is that it supports systemd inside the containers. Right. So it's no change from a cloud application running in a VM on a full-blown distro with systemd and an edge container running So the edge container can also run full-blown systemd for all its startup needs. That's a major advantage of Podman, in my opinion. It's obviously not optimized for edge at all.
But if you're
to my
using
knowledge.
something like Docker Compose or Kubernetes, do you need all? Do you still see you want those features like Podman provides, or I mean, if you use using Docker Compose, a lot of these, how to start up your container and manage it, it will be handled by Compose.
Yep. Yeah. So Podman has, you know, its own Compose alternative that's supposed to be backward compatible with Compose. Yeah, I mean, sadly, I don't think there is a good answer right now. Frankly, this ecosystem is too fragmented for there to be a good choice right at the moment. So the question is, you know, are we optimizing for compatibility with, you know, cloud Kubernetes distributions? Are we optimizing for small footprint size on embedded devices, or are we optimizing for, you know, the naive developers that we might hope to attract to the project somewhere down the line? Those are really the three choices, and each one has a distinct answer.
I think it's more of footprint than I don't think. I mean, the kind of developer we are focusing on is, I guess, the cloud native developer already bit used to containers. So it's not the naive developer, I would say.
Fair enough. That's fair. Yeah, in that case, if you're really hoping to attract a cloud developer, then I think the right answer is to do things that are consistent with kubeadm-based Kubernetes distributions, if anything, Kubernetes related. Because they're going to expect a degree of portability between the cloud and the edge that I don't see yet in K3s or micro K8s. Again, I don't think there's a good answer right now. We probably just need to stick and move. Unfortunately, just pick something and know that it's going to be painful in the future, no matter what we do.
Yeah. We have been looking at making a very small Docker Compose compatible launcher that is without even using Docker. So we are just using containerd. So it's compatible with Compose, and you can kind of structure your application in a nice way. But still, the footprint is quite small compared to the full-blown Docker and Compose.
Yeah, I mean, I guess homegrown alternatives are sort of appealing.
Yeah, footprint I think is important. So that's why I'm really skeptical about Kubernetes on the edge. At least for the majority right now system. Maybe for the future it's going to change.
Sorry, I don't have a better answer. Just more choices, more choices.
Anyway, since, as you say, there's a lot of, it's quite fragmented. So that's why also I think it's a good idea, at least for the reference implementation, to go with what is currently the standard.
And in a moving landscape, we probably need to do some changes anyway, as Brian says.
So let's move on to dbus. That's, I guess, an interesting topic as well. So currently, LAROD has that as a requirement. And, but I was thinking we could probably provide. I mean, there's two choices here. One is to change the LAROD code to another bus, probably like just Unix sockets. And another one is to provide dbus in the container itself. So that, I mean, it's dbus is, if you just take the bus broker, it's quite small. It's not big actually. You just need the bus broker itself. So that's one choice, at least in the meantime, until we have, if we want to change to another implementation. So I was going to have a look to try to do that using the Red Hat's bus one implementation and just picking the bus daemon itself. And not, there's a lot of other stuff that it provides that we don't need. But so I think just pick that. It's quite small.
I asked Google. It said about 0.5 meg.
Sorry.
478 kilobytes according to Google.
Yeah. If you just the bus daemon.
Yeah, the bus broker.
Yeah, it's quite small. So I'm not sure if it's worth it to remove that dependency.
Actually, you could add size if you remove functionality that you need. Then you could actually add size if you are changing LAROD.
Yeah.
So maybe more efficient, as you said, Fredrik, just to include the container.
Yeah, the best would be if it can auto detect if it exists. Otherwise, it starts its own or something like that.
And that could solve your problems from iPro, I guess, if that succeeds.
Yeah, but it's not my first priority to do. So we were discussing on what each person should do. I want to make this reference implementation and on a Raspberry Pi together with this Google Compute Stick.
Do we have a list of tasks so we could see who is working on what?
We used to have that. Yeah, I don't think it's updated.
Maybe it's a good idea to, since we are talking more specifically now about tasks, we could list them, and then each company could, if they choose to work on a task, they could put a name.
Yeah, I can update that list. Anyway, so what I will do is go back to kind of where we started and do the reference implementation using Yocto and add those host requirements, and then make a container layer with OpenCV and so on, and plus an example. So we have something that you can actually show.
But could iPro have a look at the dbus broker?
No, we don't have dbus on iPro camera.
No, but the proposal from Fredrik was, if you don't have dbus on your camera, you could just add the dbus broker in the container.
Oh.
And that's only 0.5 meg in size. So if you add that to the container, you could run Larod without having dbus in your system.
So far, according to our discussion, internal discussion, so the architecture change is not welcome for iPro, and therefore, so we are looking for the way of working route without dbus. Therefore, so if we need to add the dbus broker on iPro camera, so I can't answer it's okay in this timing, and therefore, so I have to discuss that thing with iPro internal members.
Yeah, please do, but I must have to make sure that you understand that this is not adding it to your camera system, it's adding it to the container, so it doesn't affect your camera system. You're just adding, the dbus broker would only be available inside the container for running a container.
It can be a separate container as well, maybe that's better.
Yeah. So it doesn't affect your product in other terms. You don't have dbus in your system. It's just in the container.
It would be, I guess, a container that you only need to start if you don't have a broker.
Yeah, it only takes half a meg, so very, very small, and it's only accessible in the container, so it doesn't affect anything else.
I see. But so I would like to discuss that thing with iPro internal member once.
Sure. Okay.
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 How about high division? Dora-san?
Yes, I have the same opinion with you, and we need time to say we haven't support dbus in our camera, and we need time to implement it. But if there is another alternative, it's welcome. And about the dbus, sorry, yeah, that's my opinion.
So, in addition, so if we introduce dbus broker into the container, in that case, so Unimatrix project provides the developers the SDK.
Yeah, but
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need time to say if the dbus broker can be implemented. It's very small, right?
Yeah, I think as Willie said, it's around 400, 500K.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that is even, because you basically only need one binary, which the daemon bus implementation itself. So everything else that's included in bus 1 should be stripped. Like there are other things for doing starting other daemons based on dbus signals and so on. That you don't need all those things. So yeah, I think that single binary is only for 500K.
Okay.
So I understand. So the installation size is very small. So, however, so my question is, how will we provide to the developer the way of creating OCR image. So we will share the build tool to the developers or the reference on the GitHub. Which one is better?
So I think we will have an SDK container, right? So you would, and that container has all the dependencies, and then you will.
I also think so. Unimatrix project should provide the SDK to the developers because so they don't understand how to create the OCI image with the dbus broker individual.
But the dbus broker will already be, so that will be an extra container that is built by us. So that one, and it needs to be started on systems that doesn't have a broker.
Yeah, so it's transparent. That's what you're saying, Fredrik. They don't have to understand if your system has dbus or not. If we do it correctly, it would auto-detect.
Yeah, for developers, they don't have to worry about that. They will never use dbus directly anyway, because you're going to use the LARAD API. So that doesn't really, in LARAD, for the inference API, there's nothing about dbus or whatever the underlying mechanism there. So we can change if we decide in the future. Okay, we don't want dbus, so we can still remove it without the developers knowing about it. Okay.
I got a bunch of questions. So with the dbus brokers that were installed by the container, so do we have to care about the systemd?
No, LARAD doesn't have a dependency on systemds. So
yes, because the current version of Laravel, I think it still needs systemd to control the dbus broker.
okay, yeah, I'll consult with the LARAD guys, but it shouldn't be a dependency. I think only there is maybe systemd script to I think it was for some other, I don't remember it, but yeah, I'll have a look at it. That there shouldn't be a dependency there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, should we move on to OpenCV then? So that's also something I will look at. Just create a default configuration for OpenCV it will include video for Linux backend plus FFmpeg, and then some of the default the most common features, like of course the base, and then there's a high level API, and but when we when we measured it, I think it was around 15 megabytes. And then, depending on how you make your application, yeah, depending on which libraries you actually use, some of those, I guess, will be stripped away. So it's not guaranteed that everything will be included, I guess. But yeah, that's roughly the size of OpenCV 15. As a small, quite minimal distribution of OpenCV. Because there's a lot of libraries in OpenCV, but I excluded most of it. But then one question is how to get video into OpenCV. So as I said, there is two normal backends. You have FFmpeg and then Video for Linux. So from Axis, we don't use any of those actually. So we have done our own backend. So I would like to check with you, with other companies, how are you supporting Video for Linux, for example, in your cameras, or do you also have like your own video API? Maybe someone from iPro can start.
So I don't understand. So your intention. So according to your explanation, so the video APIs as the video API standard, so OpenCV is suggested. But so according to your explanation, so you will use the your proprietary backend architecture. So what should we answer your question? So
no,
I don't know your
if you
intention.
So we had to write our own backend for OpenCV because we don't support any of the existing backends. I mean, there is backends for Android, there is backends for Video for Linux, for FFmpeg and other, but Axis doesn't. We don't support Video for Linux, so we had to write our own. It's not so difficult, but at least it says. So we want to include that in the OpenCV as well. It's a small piece of code, I guess. So my question is, do you have a similar situation that you don't support Video for Linux?
For Hackvision, we don't have a video API for Linux, so maybe we will implement our own OpenCV backend to support the get UV APIs.
Okay, maybe then you can have a look how we did it and get some inspiration.
Okay, and also for Open API, I think maybe we should specify which APIs need to be mandatory and which APIs are optional, like this kind of specification.
You mean for OpenCV?
Yeah.
Yeah, We can do that. My idea was I make just an initial proposal, and then we can discuss around that. So that will be like a configuration of how to build OpenCV, and then you can see what is turned on and turned off and so on.
Okay.
Or is this a task that Dora could do, Fredrik?
Yeah, I mean, we could all certainly have a look, and then we'll just make a compromise what people think are important. I mean, there's a huge set of variables you can configure because it's such a huge framework. But I think, but you have to compromise and kind of, because otherwise it can become quite huge.
So if Dora could present maybe the next TB what their view is, what is needed, and maybe IPRO as well.
You mean I prepare the requirements of OpenCV?
Yes, what from your side, what would you like to have mandatory in OpenCV?
Okay, I will do it. Maybe share it next time.
Okay. Okay, good. Also, maybe someone from IPRO can also have a look.
Okay. I will confirm the. Is your question? So iPro investigate the video API about OpenCV. If we will use the OpenCV.
What would you like to have mandatory?
So for example, OpenCV has feature detection, I mean, there's so many algorithms. Which ones are needed? There's like deep learning, and there's like a lot of libraries and algorithms, and so the question is, which of those are essential?
As a video API?
Yes. I mean,
okay. I will check it.
Okay. Any other ideas about OpenCV?
No from IPRO side.
All right. So next point was MQTT broker. So I think it would be a good idea to include a broker, and then if you want to publish something to an external broker, you can set up rules in the broker which messages to relay. So I think also we should provide a container, an MQTT broker container. All right, I guess there was no input on that. Maybe we should discuss this a little bit about security and orchestration. So I noticed that both iPro and Hikvision is not happy about having SSH enabled, and I mean, I'm a bit surprised because this is how you normally, if you used any cloud platform, it's always SSH that is the control channel. So but it all depends on how you secure SSH. Of course, you don't want to log in there with root and have full access to everything and so on. So it's a token based security login that has specific permissions only to do what it needs, nothing else. So it all depends on how you have set up your SSH connection. So I'm a bit surprised that it's like saying that no, we can't use TCP because it can be attacked by or it's because I see it just as a fundamental infrastructure.
So far, so iPro camera only allow the end users to access to the camera via HTTP. By doing so, the security is established, and therefore, so if we need to be accessed to the camera via SSH by the end users. So in that case, so we would like to know how to keep the security from the attack.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Then we can explain how we are doing that with, how we are doing that with Ansible. But the person from Axis who will do that, he's not here right now. He's on vacation. So hopefully next time we can do a small presentation around that. It's a token-based authentication that gives certain permissions only. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Okay.
All right, then.
So,
there. Yeah.
Frederick-san, so could you please summarize the action items, for example, in the Excel sheet, and so share the attendees later. And in addition, so it seems we have a lot of things to discuss about the Unimatrix. Therefore, so so it's better for us to have the TV call more short span. How do you think? How do you feel that?
Yeah, every 2 weeks I think is fine.
Okay.
So I guess next call could be on the 4th of August. But when is your vacation weeks starting in Japan?
In Japan, so from August 6th to 16th.
Okay, then the 4th of August is okay.
Okay.
Is it okay for everyone else?
Yes, it's okay.
All right. Okay, I'll summarize. I'm not going to summarize in Excel. I put it in the agenda as minutes in this agenda that I sent out.
It's also okay.
Okay. Okay,
And
then.
finally,
sorry.
So finally, Frederick-san shares the questionnaire URL on the GitLab agenda document. And therefore, please answer the questionnaire after this meeting to all members, attendees. Okay.
Yes, great. All right. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Sure.